What if Thanos doubled the resources? Marvel fans have wondered why the Mad Titan didn't just double the resources. Seems like an obvious proposition that doesn't involve murdering billions, right? Here's what would happen if Thanos used the snap to double Earth's resources. Everyone would die. Hear me out. First, let's define resources. Forests. The world needs forests for multiple reasons that you can research for yourself. Farmland, livestock, natural gas, oil, water. These are just the main ones that we'll cover in this video. If all of them doubled instantly, it would bring disaster. Our forests would increase from 4.06 billion hectares to 8.12 billion. That's over 20 billion acres. We would go from 5.4 million square miles of farmland to 10.8 million square miles. Our farm animals would double from 70 billion to 140 billion. Natural gas would go from 7,257 trillion cubic feet to 14,514 trillion cubic feet. Oil reserves would increase from 1.65 trillion barrels to 3.3 trillion. And that doesn't take into account the unproven reserves. Water would double from 326 million trillion gallons to 652 million trillion gallons. Over 2/3 of this is in ice and glaciers. Earth would not be able to handle all of that at once. 10.8 million square miles of farmland, 140 billion farm animals, and over 20 billion acres of forests. So it's reasonable to argue that, at the very least, we would have to take away a lot of our developed land, which means that a lot of people would go homeless. Not to mention, what if the oil, water, and natural gas underground expanded so much that the Earth's mantle was compromised? More than likely, we'd have to expand our land to make space for everything else. So much land would be required that there wouldn't be enough space for water, ice, and glaciers. Speaking of which, even if there were safe ways to contain all of these resource expansions, we would all drown. We already read headlines about how sea levels are rising, and there are areas of dry land that scientists predict will be underwater in the somewhat near future. So if Thanos doubled our water, we would face a global flood. Only marine life would survive. To survive this, we'd have to double the size of the planet. And as Batman would say,
if we had a week, I couldn't list all the reasons that won't work.
But let's say for argument's sake that Thanos could give us a utopia, where he doubles our resources and uses the Infinity Stones to provide said resources in a safe manner. He wouldn't do it. He would take one look at our polluted land and water. He'd see marine life tangled in litter that had been irresponsibly discarded, water suffering from industrial pollution, garbage thrown on the ground, and he would argue that half the population needed to die so that the remaining half would learn to truly appreciate their resources. He would think that if he changed his mind, let everyone live and magically doubled our resources, if there was a scientifically safe way to do so, the inhabitants would become spoiled if they never tasted the bitter cost of resource depletion. Thanos is a sociopath, pure and simple. Also, a small footnote. If Thanos cut our population in half, we would only be set back to the world's population in the 1970s. So it wouldn't even make that big of a difference if the goal is to preserve resources. Give it 50 years of the same habits and we'd be right back to where we are today. But that's just what I think. What do you wonderful people think would happen if Thanos doubled our resources? Let me know in the comments below. As always, keep weaving the threads of your stories.